Hey listeners, Mallory Wilsey here, Chief Producer of the Enrollify Network. I get the privilege of working alongside all of our creators at Enrollify, but I wanted to take just a quick moment to tell you about why I love the Talking Tactics podcast hosted by Diana Kibbolds. Every other Tuesday, Day drops a new episode where she focuses on a single tactic that moved the needle on any enrollment metric, from inquiries and booth visitors to apps completed and deposits, even registrations, you name it. The catch? The tactic had to be done with limited resources, either by a single person or a small but mighty team, or limited time, or maybe without a lot of money. The podcast format is fun and engaging, and it's just different from the more traditional 60-minute interview style shows. If you work in enrollment management or marketing, be sure to give Day's show a listen. You can subscribe to the show by visiting podcast.enrollify.org or just search Talking Tactics wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to the Generation AI podcast, where we, Ardis and I, demystify artificial intelligence in the world of higher education. As a model, we have a bias to higher education because we love it, we treasure it. I am joined by my awesome co-host, Ardis Kadiu, and I'm, of course, JC Bonilla. How you doing, Ardis?
I'm great, JC. Doing really well. Right before this, we were talking about grilling, and now you got me really excited. Well, jealous that you actually have a butcher that can get you any kind of meat, and I'm left with the supermarket cuts.
If you're familiar with butchers, I live a block away from the Red Hook Meat. The Red Hook Meat Court or something like that. I've already forgot the name. Oh my gosh. I was going to give them a plug. One of the most famous butchers here in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. Fantastic cuts. And yeah, we're kicking off grilling season. We are recording on the eves of legit summer, right? And the weather is here telling us it's summer, the vibes are here. And more importantly, AI is telling us it's summer vibes. Because today, Ardis, we're talking about, I heard this from our friends in Hartford, AI vertigo. What we saw being released in the past 2 weeks is just incredible how hardware and software have come together, have a child, and is exactly what I expected. Ardis, we're here to talk about Microsoft deployment of Copilot and PCs, as well as Google's deployment of their newest version of their LLM through their conference, right? So, Ardis, excited about what's happening today?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be the summer unless if you're in technology, you have Google I/O, you have Microsoft Build, you have WWDC from Apple that's coming up in the next week or two. And all of these conferences are basically a huge dump of here's our vision and here's kind of what we're talking about. And that's what we're going to be talking in today's episode. We're going to be kind of taking a deep dive into the recent I/O conference and the Microsoft Build conference. And like you said, artificial intelligence really stood front and center. But the reason why we pay attention to this is because they're hosted by two companies that are the most significant consumer technology companies globally, right? And they really gave us a glimpse into the future of consumer tech and how AI is now coming into everything that we do from the foundation and even further than that. So from where you're talking about PCs, to Google search with maps, to smartphones with AI, having, baked in AI there, productivity like Office with Copilots and AI, and then of course, Google Workspaces, including AI, everything in there. So it's crazy. I mean, that's a lot. There's a lot going on.
Let me set the stage so you can start doing the announcements. And I'm going to do it with two questions. Question number one, or point number one, and then the second question. Point number one, these are the two giants. And as you mentioned, these are the conferences where they tell us what they're working on. Microsoft, with this conference, the biggest investor, the biggest tentacles on AI by, a factor of probably 10x, telling us, I have AI and PC dominated. But at the same time, on the Google side, what happens in this conference is that they dominate the search experience. And with these new versions of AI, we start seeing how the new web is going to be reinvented. And my question, Ardis, after you've seen all these things, what are you going to do with the Element conference? Because, oh my gosh, what an experience. So does that change your mindset of how to do the Element Engage experience?
It's, I mean, just if I have a few $1 trillion worth of market cap, then maybe we'll do something different, and we'll make a bunch of those announcements as well. But we made a bunch of announcements as well, and I'm in the back of my head, I'm starting to think, I'm like, I need that introductory video in here. How do I set the stage?
Ardis, that was not an announcement. That was a metaphysical experience when it comes to product rollout. I was listening to that and I'm like, oh my gosh, these guys, they really know how to do it. And remember, everybody, it goes back to, Apple, Steve Jobs, and really, I'm going to use the word, the cult of many of us who follow the technology, and they tell us this is where we're going. So Ardis, we'll start with Google.
Well, I mean, we can start with Microsoft because that's the experience that you had. You saw the announcement of the PC plus AI. And why don't you tell us like what you thought as you saw the announcement of what it is actually? For some of us or some of our audience, they might have not have heard about it yet or not understand what was announced.
So let me start with one of the probably most interesting quotes that I've seen today that captures what we've been doing. The conference sets the stage that for the longest time, we have been trying to understand computers. But now we reach a point where computers understand us. However, one of the limitations of this computational power that we know exists, right, is that we need to bring these LLMs that have pushed software and computational power to the next level. And we've spoken about how global versus local models, do its thing. And now what Microsoft is telling us is now we have created a new device, a PC, that is native to this type of way of having a computer understand us, interaction, right? And that's why I wanted to start with now the computer interacts us, because it's a native aspect, a full embodiment of how the software and the hardware should operate so that we can natively do AI. And the features that they went through, fascinating. But that's basically to set the stage. Ardis, what about you? What was your first takeaway as you heard, what happened there?
Yeah, so the PC and AI, Copilot PC, I think that's what they're calling it, Copilot plus PC. So Copilot has been the name brand that Microsoft has been putting together around their AI assistants. And this is something that they're doing Copilot for a lot of different things, but Copilot and PC, essentially what I understood from it or what I saw there was a little bit more of a voyeuristic kind of approach to computing. So think about as if you have a person sitting next to you that's looking over your shoulders at everything that you're doing, and you can call them up at any point and say, help me with this, or what do you think about this? And they know exactly what you're doing because it's capturing all of your screen share, all your screen in real time, every single time. So it's a little bit scary at the same time, but it opens up so many possibilities. And of course, everybody wants to say, hey, this is going to be beneficial. But yeah, just having that deep integration with the operating system. And that's what Microsoft is known for, right? They're known for their operating system. They're known for their developer tools. And that's what they're kind of introduced and said, this is the future. This is the marriage of hardware and kind of computing in your desktop, right? In your desktop.
There were a lot of intentional playbacks and trying to ground the audience on Microsoft Windows 95 and how it was native to a PC or how it changed PC landscapes. Ardis, we're going to have this conversation about Microsoft. We now it's called Copilot, around the agents that they've mentioned, the multimodal capabilities, and this very interesting deployment of what they call the tiny language model. So the first agent that they showcased, it was called Recall.
Yeah.
Did you remember that? It was fascinating, and it starts basically painting the picture. What Ardis says, the person behind the scenes, basically looking over my shoulder, in my case, assisting me. Think about you're in a laptop in stage, right? Whether you're a PC or a Mac user or whatever. Common use case. Where is that file? Wait, I heard this. I need to insert this quote that was mentioned on a meeting 17 hours ago. Recall is the aspect of, I remember there's something here, and now I just cannot find it. And then 3 hours later, whatever, we found it, and then we move along in our workflows. Recall has basically rechange indexing. And then how? I remember this slide that was purple. I'm talking to you, Ardis. Remember that slide that was purple that you presented at Engage 17 years ago, right? And you're like, yeah, here's the slide. Now I can come and do that natively. Find me that red slide, and not only finds the slide deck, it would position you onto that slide that it was, I don't know, slide 57 out of the deck that was, 3 years old. So some of the agents that are starting to emerge kind of have that context and color.
So the smarts are actually coming in and interacting with your software. I mean, this is what we've been talking about over the past year and a half now. And, every single part of my conversations when I talk about AI and our vision, even that element, has been the mode of interaction is going to be conversational. I didn't say text. We always said conversational. So you now come in and you're conversing with your computer, and it's actually has its tools and tentacles into everything that you do. And you are just telling the AI or Copilot what to do, or the agents, right? So that's what we've been talking about. And now we're seeing it, but it doesn't really click until you actually see it, in real time. It's like, oh, that's the use case. It's doing exactly that. The part that you're mentioning around recall, I mean, that's a little freaky as well, right? Because it's like, think about...
I loved it because it reflected a lot of my work style. But yeah, why do you think it's freaky?
So it can be, like I said, a little voyeuristic, a little like Big Brother watching, because it reminds me maybe 5 years ago or 10 years ago, we were working with a few folks, and it was through Upwork, or I forget some of the platforms. But essentially what they had is this mechanism where it was taking a screenshot of their work, of their desktop, every certain interval of time. And then it was posting that as part of the hourly work that they were doing. So now I'm looking at this, and that's the connection that I'm making with it, because I'm like, this seems very similar, but from a consumer perspective, it's very powerful, because now you don't have to remember. Like you could have wrote something yesterday, like you said, or you could have changed your slides, and you're like, damn, I deleted this by accident, or I have no idea where this thing is, or I was browsing something. Like that's the one that comes back to mind for me, because I do a lot of my research, but if I didn't capture that research, or if I didn't capture that screenshot of whatever I was looking at, it's gone. And now in my head, I just have a recollection of it, but I don't really know what it was. So having that ability, it's really interesting. I think what Microsoft is doing with this small language models or small models, they understand that the opportunity for security and privacy, it's really important. So what they mentioned is that the compute is happening at the edge. So these aren't going to the cloud. They don't need the cloud. And the models are operating locally. So this is the first time, well, not the first time, but this is now the benefit of what Microsoft is bringing, is that they're operating these models on your PC. So the data doesn't leave your computer. It stays there. They don't have to go to the cloud. It's not connected to a service. Everything is happening locally, so it's private and secure.
And let's not forget, this is a developer conference, right? Which indicates that Copilots and the agents and the partnership with OpenAI, it's front and center, because I just gave you a use case of one agent, but there's going to be a proliferation of agents and the use cases will emerge. So I look forward the agent that is called Slacker, and basically the PC telling me, dude, stop Facebooking, go back to work or something like that. I don't know, because they're going to be observing my every move. Ardis, can you talk to everybody about what was your takeaway on the multimodal capabilities, and how does that connect to this OpenAI, behind the scenes? Like, this is very, very interesting, and it kind of takes us also back to a prior episode. But what was that? Where's Copilot going with multimodal?
Yeah, we did talk about that for sure. So the multimodal is really around, like, it's exactly that. So when we talked last week, you said, hey, the desktop version of GPT 4.0 is available, and you downloaded it and you showed us live.
Have you gotten it?
I haven't gotten it yet. I don't know what's going on.
Oh my gosh, I use it so much. It's so great. It's so great.
But now we understand that they don't have a version for Windows. And of course, a week later, you see it's like, oh, it's native to Windows. It's not, you don't need an app for it because it's native to Windows. So they're using the same underlying technology or GPT-4o with vision in order to drive a lot of these models. What was really interesting to me, JC, was two things. They kept talking about the collaboration with OpenAI and Microsoft, because you have these two camps, right? You have OpenAI, Microsoft, and then you have Google and the work that they're doing in Gemini in terms of the most advanced models. But what kind of stood out to me was they kept talking about scaling, because this is a developer conference. They kept talking about scaling laws, and they said, we're not there yet. These models and these things are, the more compute you throw at them, the better they get. So it's kind of a peek behind the curtain of GPT-5 and what's coming, because the more compute they're throwing at it, the better these models get. And we haven't seen the scaling laws. So if GPT-4 was 10 times better than GPT-3.5, then GPT-5 was probably going to be 10 times or 100 times better than GPT-4.0. So I can't wait to own those capabilities. But all of these agent-based experiences that we're talking about, from vision to reasoning to audio, they're going to be a lot better. And one thing that Microsoft mentioned is agents, they're going to be asynchronous, meaning you're going to provide it with some kind of a goal or a job description, and it's going to go ahead and do that in the background without asking you all the time. So goal-oriented agents. So that's what I'm seeing. And maybe a couple of months from now, 6 months from now.
I mean, there's a lot to unpack with a goal-oriented agent, because you know how reinforcement learning takes place, right? There has to be an incentive and understand what the goal is. Probably there's going to be the opportunity for customization. Look, I really want this to be a ruthless productivity tool. So it tells me stay away from these things. I want this to be a pleasure. It is a gaming console. Like all those type of things definitely will come in. And to your point about scalability and capabilities, the nuance that the goals are individual, multifaceted, and nuance, right?
So if we go back to kind of the embedding of this technology as part of your day-to-day, like the PC, the Copilot being part of your workplace and everything else, this then moves away from like the notion that people are bringing their own AI to work, right? We talked about that 2 episodes ago, where people are bringing their own AI. I had a couple of conversations and webinars and also workshops, and I asked people, are you using generative AI right now? And ChatGPT is usually the most one. And they're like, no, I got something yesterday where this lady said, well, we're not allowed to use generative AI at our institution. Like they don't let us use it. But they let us use Copilot. They say you can use Copilot, but we can't use generative AI. So there's a huge misunderstanding in terms of, it's like, if it's part of your tools, because Copilot is what we're talking about, is actually embedded in your tools right now. And when you think about it, it's like there is this misconception that generative AI was ChatGPT and this chatbots, but that is not how you're going to interact with AI going forward. It's going to be part of your tools. And this lady, and of course the IT team, I'm like, okay, it's exactly the same models that are underneath. So I'm not sure why they made a determination that you can't use generative AI, but you can use Copilot, because it's exactly the same thing. So there's a huge misconception even from practitioners, and I bring this up because we talk about higher education and how people make policies right now. We're actually, just to give you from a legal perspective as well, so we're getting a couple of contracts back and saying, well, as part of state systems, like, we have the right to revoke contracts if you use AI as part of the contract. And we're like, what do you mean? Like, so they're going as far as eliminating it from contracts. So pushing back on it, as we're working through them now, it's like, well, okay, fine, you can use it, but we're going to add in all of the liability of, anything that gets produced from that AI to be on the organization that provides that tool. And I'm like, how does that work? So there's such a misunderstanding of what these things are that everybody is just throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks from a policy or from even a governance perspective. So anyways, I wanted to bring that up because it's like the adoption is going to be around bringing it into their own current tools rather than, going out there with chatbots. You mentioned the legal stuff before. I just thought that was an interesting topic because it's very, very recent in my mind.
Look, you hit it right on the nail, right? These type of deployments accelerate the capabilities, the use cases now being embedded and seamless on hardware, basically just took 17 steps ahead. So more things need to be developed. The ecosystem requirement for legal support, human enablement, which is basically, fear, if you will, it's not there. My point is just keep on going, and the technology and the depth of where the technology is and what our human capability now to use the technology, it keeps on increasing. So that's my point, and we'll see where it takes us. Going back to Copilot PC, the one thing I'd like to remind everybody is that, again, we're thinking about how AI-enhanced experiences, right, boost productivity, creativity, multiple things like that, but it's an AI experience. So that's basically the new definition. As we start thinking about experience, many things need to come and realign. All right, is anything else you want to talk about this Microsoft front? Because there's Google, and I have to tell you, if you're Apple today, I'm worried. Because this really, if you're the CEO of Microsoft, my gosh, I applaud you. What a gangster move. What a great move. Because it makes me consider PC, someone who has left PC world and land for like 20 years, just because I want to touch it and I want to experience. I want to be part of this AI enhanced experience.
Hey, it's Mallory. Exciting news! I'm hosting the Engage Summit in Raleigh on June 25th and 26th, and I'd love to meet you there. Together, we'll dive into the mind of the modern student, what fires them up, how they interact, and what they expect in today's digital age, and how tools like AI help put them in the driver's seat of their education. We have some terrific speakers, including our closing keynote, New York Times best-selling author Jeff Selingo. Sessions will dig into practical ideas and innovative strategies to get your team more student-centered and ready to adopt AI. And many of your favorite Enrollify hosts are presenting too, like Jamie Hunt, Jenny Lee Fowler, and Brian Gross. Use the discount code Enrollify50 for an extra $50 off your registration. Learn more and register at engage.element451.com. We can't wait to see you there.
So, should we talk about Google?
Let's do it. I mean, Google, of course. So last year they got caught flat-footed, so to speak, right?
Can you remind everybody why were they flat-footed?
Well, OpenAI introduced ChatGPT, and of course, everybody is like, well, we're bringing in technology that was developed at Google, and they're making this advances with transformers, right? With GPT, the Teen GPTs for transformer technology was invented in Google. They were very conservative. They didn't put a lot of that into their products, and they saw the adoption last year. So now the market really went down, and they got hit pretty hard.
So they caught behind, and they rushed, and the beta deployments of BARD and like that kind of things.
Yeah, they didn't work very well. Exactly. It was this
horrible, right? So what you're saying is that was a flat-footed thing. They developed the technologies, they don't leverage. They try to catch up to the new innovation coming from OpenAI, and it's just basically not a slam dunk. But did they dunk on us right now?
So they just. It was everywhere, man. It was like AI everywhere. So what I saw was like, I can't imagine, how busy everybody at Google must have been over the past year or even 6 months. The technology was everywhere, from AI, like basically some of the most advanced models like Gemini. They're putting Gemini everywhere. So Gemini 1.5, the most advanced one. They introduced Gemini, now has a 2 million context window. Incredible, right? 2 million token context window. So for those of you who don't know, the context is how much stuff can you give the large language model as part of the context or your prompt? How big can it be? In this case, 2 million can be, I don't know, like, let's Google it maybe. Let's Google how much text can you fit in 2 million tokens. But essentially, you can give it all the books that you want. And then now you can ask questions on that books. So opens up a lot more possibilities. It's again, we've talked about this before. It's multimodal by design. They introduced Gemini Flash, which it's now faster, a lot faster and cheaper. So now they can introduce that and it can add it into a lot more use cases because Gemini is really big. So now Flash is a lot faster. So you can see the pattern here. So we're getting better models, bigger models, more advanced, and they're including it in everything that they're doing.
With the context window, Ardis, this is the use case I cannot wait because it's connecting to Gmail. Hey, Gemini, who am I? Just based on emails, the ability to come and understand my interest, what I talk about, who I talk about, like literally that's the prompt and see what it takes us. Who am I? Because I really believe that there's an artifact of communication via email that I've been, using for the past, 15 years? And that's the point, that it can ingest 15 years worth of emails sent and received and can tell me these are your interests. He could probably look at even a response, like what I open and reply and things like that, and tell me this is what I care about.
Well, guess what? One of the things they introduced was Gemini in everywhere around workspaces and Gmail as well. So now you can ask it, tell me the most important meetings that I have over this week, or emails that I have this week, or things that I need to do. So I'm like, okay, that's interesting. We can go back, and it probably killed a bunch of companies. Like, for example, TripIt, which is an interesting one. For you just send a bunch of emails that you got confirmations from travel, and he puts together a really nice itinerary for you, and he keeps you track of that. Well, guess what? I could just ask it to say, give me the itinerary for this upcoming trip, and then it will go through all your confirmations and give you that. So that's a startup that just got killed right there.
We pay $45 a year for this membership that gives me a summary of how I spend my time in Google Calendar. Officially, I forgot the name of the company, but you are done, my friends, because I can do that for free now.
Yeah, exactly. There was a really, really good article from this every.to too. They put some really interesting content together. And one of them was around the Microsoft build, but they were talking to they had an exclusive interview with the Microsoft CTO. And it was interesting around how should you be thinking about the opportunities of building new companies around, like, what are the opportunities? So the interesting thing that came up is like, well, don't build things that are easy right now to do or somewhat difficult, right? Think about like what are things that are they seem impossible right now that might have some longevity in the future. However, if you build something that's difficult, it's going to be really, really easy in a few months or 6 months or a year. And it's not going to be around because that's going to be now embedded into, some of the large productivity tools that we have available, or even, the larger companies. It's going to be a feature rather than a whole product.
That's such a good point. The simplicity of the use cases and how this technology enablement allows us to start doing, things that are totally crazy or very, very simple. So your first thing is Google Gemini brings us into workplaces and connects my meets, my calendar, my everything, and allows you to summarize. The photos feature, Ardis, I mean, how often do you want to query, show me the picture where JC is with a blue shirt? Where's that picture that I have a blue shirt and like these gigantic headphones and I'm like, I don't know, seems that I'm having a good time? Oh, it was a picture of this podcast today, right? You know how often I want to query that way, but it's impossible, and it basically, I don't know, in my phone or in the laptop or whatever you're looking, 45 minutes later, I found the picture. Like, just talking about how time is the anchor for optimization, right? And when you think about photos, what a simple, incredible use case to basically be able to query, search across your photos using natural language. Incredible, right? So excited about that feature.
Yeah. That's an easy one.
Easy, but that's your point, easy.
It was easy. Yeah, I mean, exactly. It's like finding their license plate. It's like, what's my license plate? Dude, you know how many times I have to go park and I don't know my license plate and I have to like search through my photos because my car is somewhere else. and now I have to find the license plate. So I have actually starred my license plate and put it separately just so I can, that use case.
You tattooed it on your left hand side, on your left arm. So you're like, what's the license plate?
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. That's a funny one. One thing that they announced, so talking about agents, right? So Microsoft is going down the agent route, but they're talking about it as infrastructure. And they're partnering with OpenAI to do the modeling. So they're using Vision or GPT-4 Vision and a few of those things. So they're thinking about agents as part of like the larger infrastructure. So in our last episode, we talked about like the GPT-4o and kind of the agentic approach to real-time audio and how you can go back and forth with it. Well, Google announced something very similar. They called it Project Astra, and they called it a universal AI agent helpful in everyday life. So essentially, you have a real-time video that they're going around and they're asking it questions because it's actually taking the multimodality, it's taking video in, and they're going around and asking it questions about where did I leave my sunglasses? And it actually remembers it where it left the sunglasses because it was part of the video. Tell me when you see something that makes sound, for example, and it goes through around and it finds a speaker, and then that's in it kind of you can ask questions about the speaker. So this Project Astra is again an agent very similar. So now we're seeing the convergence of where this technology is going, right? The agent ability to have agents they can see, they can hear, they can read things, and they are always on. They also switch the agents from a phone to a wearable. So they switched it to glasses. So wearables are actually very, very interesting, and we're probably going to see a lot more of that. We've talked about this before around wearables and glasses, but I see that as accelerating as these models get faster and better, and this agent's ability to do multimodal is just incredible. And that's what they showed with Project Astra. So really, really excited.
Super excited. Ardis, I was wondering if we can dance on our perceptions of how Gemini in this introduction of Google changes this Google search experience, right?
Yeah, I was going to say let's wrap it all up with that, because Google search is huge. It's going to impact, of course, marketing, higher education, like how the consumers. It's kind of a big deal.
But let's recap, right? So what is this Google search experience? We're talking about the cash party, volcano extravaganza that Google benefits from because number one, they reinvented, I'm going to use the word reinvented, our web experience, because you know how search engines now and websites relate to each other. What is called the rank, right? And search engine optimization is a thing. The commercialization of that experience comes through I go and I search for something, right? And I can click on that word or the selection of how that comes about, organic versus paid. Basically, every time you click on something, there's probably cents going to Google, right? And those cents becomes trillions of searchers, which probably generates millions of dollars per minute. Now, that native experience goes away because the whole premise that is happening here is that when I search, I don't have to click through. And the click through is what brings the sense. Because what AI does is it brings me the summary, right? And it tells me what's happening there. So are we saying that is media dead? Are we saying colleges and universities, as you recruit, it doesn't matter how your website looks like. There's something really different now with how the Chrome experience and search overall, it's going to end. And no one has seen it perfectly. But this is changing, Ardis. What do you make of that?
I mean, the trend is there. We've been talking about this in this podcast, so this is nothing new, right? But however, when you look at it from a marketer's perspective and somebody who does SEO, it's changing the game altogether. So if you hired an agency to do SEO, it's very, very different. But I did listen to an interview that happened right before I/O with Sundar Pichai with Bloomberg, right? So they had a segment and they asked him specifically about this. It's like, are you cannibalizing your own business? You make all your money around search, and now you're going in. Are you going to replace everything? Is the link dead? And his answer was a little bit more political, but basically what I understood or what I heard from him is like, look, we got to advance and kind of disrupt ourselves. Otherwise, the market is going to disrupt us, and they're going to provide this experience in front of consumers. So we need to do this because that's what the market is telling us. However, what he said is that because Google has all the world's knowledge mapped out and they have the best sources and all of this together, they are in a position to build the best product, generative AI product for search, right? So when I see that, it's inevitable. Google is being pushed in order to do that. They're going to need to find ways to drive traffic or to make that advertising relevant in the context of the generative AI. I don't know how they're going to do that, but you can potentially see as much as 1/3 or even half of that traffic go down and completely be eliminated over the next year to your sites coming from Google search. So media companies, they're screwed.
But I want to double click on your last statement. Traffic to your website will drop
Yeah.
significantly.
Yep.
But you know what is not going to drop? The eyeballs going onto Google, because they organize everybody, like the world's information. And that is going to be probably the emergence of the new business models that power all this, right? That the incentive is that look, maybe this is Haven. If you host a website, you know that is hard. For those of us who build websites, it's hard. So now it reduces the pressure of having that, because it's about having the information and how it gets summarized and presented. But I don't have to, in a way, have a nice house and invite the guests to come to my house, right? It's just basically, if this is who I am, and they get to know me without coming to the house and clean up and all that kind of stuff. That's a really interesting change.
Well, actually, not quite, right? So, so if you have a really interesting house, right, and somebody is going to talk about the brand, they're going to send people to your website, right? Right now, I just did a webinar yesterday. So we released the product because we believe that this new experience is going to be really important. We talked about this before, but we're calling it Bold Discovery, right? And it's essentially the same like what we're talking about here, but it's Google AI overviews and Google search, generative AI search, but for your website. You can load everything into the knowledge base, into the graph, and then provide that experience to people on your website itself. So it replaces your search, it replaces a lot of the things that we're talking about. But the way that I'm looking at the data and the surveys is that about 60% of people go to Google just to type in the name of the school or the name of the university or the website or the company, and then they click on that first link in order to go to your website. So that's how they're getting some of that traffic. That's how they're getting some of those eyeballs. So, and then your website still becomes the number one from a school's perspective. It's still the number one form of information. So that student, if they're honing in on the brand and the school, and then they're going into your website to find more information about your programs, about tuition, like essentially explore the brand more. So it doesn't go away. Like your website still needs to be there. The information still needs to be there.
The information, but the traffic, it's the point.
The traffic is going to change. Exactly. So now you might need to diversify the ad buy. Like you might go more on social, right? And this is what you're talking about. And this is what Gary is talking about with his new book. So the way that you're driving traffic to your front door is going to change. And maybe SEO is not the way to do that anymore, or it's going to go down. So other forms of like social media, but you still need the information on your website because people are still going to go there to find it. You might want to make that experience a lot better by incorporating something like Bold Discovery, for example, or better search, so they can get that information in a nicer way without having to dig things around.
Right. So to recap and start basically bringing this home, everybody, what we've been talking about is very interesting deployments of Microsoft and how they're bringing computation and AI to a new experience. We're looking forward to seeing that. And with the deployment of Google that just literally has dunked on us incredible progress in front of our eyes, we're starting to see how the SEO search model changes. Universities and everyone who is responsible for websites, you are still on the hook. But probably what's going to happen is the experience of search, the experience of discovery, it just doesn't happen natively on your website. but your content is being pinged and is being summarized and presented and rearranged, right? But the content, the information, you're still on the hook. And what we know also for sure is that how you start investing the $1, how do you buy the attention? And to use the Gary terminology, we're going to see where is enterprise attention? It's basically what we need to start figuring out. But really, really interesting week on AI, and fascinating how really fast connected to business models, how I think about compute, hardware, embedded, native, and also the media models, investment model, and search. Ardis, anything from you to wrap up?
I mean, this is quite a bit. So hopefully we've kind of brought a bunch of those kind of things together and what's happening, because these are very important signals on what's coming down the road for us, and how consumers are going to be adopting these technologies, and how as marketers, as enrollment managers, as technologists, as people who are building stuff for consumers and driving their experiences, we need to keep an eye out for how the large companies are driving the consumer behavior as well, and our students as well, kind of the expectations of what they're going to have. So lots of stuff going on. However, the direction, it's still the same, which is conversational interfaces. You're going to interact with your technology through conversations. It's going to be dialogues. It's going to be real time. It's going to be multimodal and ubiquitous in wherever you are. So that's the direction. It's going to be in your context, where you are, in your tools, in your glasses, in your PCs, and it's accelerating. And the power is getting, like, we're doubling and doubling the power and the capabilities as things go on. So thanks everybody for listening in. Hopefully we've kind of given you a little peek of what's happening. These are, again, very bleeding edge technologies. Some of them are not available yet, and they're just previewed them. So they're going to be released over through the rest of the year. So hopefully you get a chance to play with some of them. JC, we have to do I started reading the Gary book,
Day Trading Attention.
Day Trading Attention. Amazing first few chapters. And I want to see if we can do an episode, because it's very, very relevant to this generation. And AI plays a huge role in the algorithms that are driving our attention in all these social platforms. So maybe we can kind of touch base on that, or we can talk about that in our next episode.
Cannot wait. All right, everybody, have a wonderful rest of the week, and sign up, follow us, send us a comment. Thank you so much for your attention.
Until next time. Generation AI is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you're going to like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing weekly, and we've got a wide range of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed leaders and professionals like you find their next big idea. They feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts, like Jamie Hunt, Seth Odell, Jenny Lee Fowler, Brian Gross, and many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform that's helping institutions all over the country create meaningful, personalized, and engaging connections with their prospects and students. Learn more at element451.com.